Hannah Carter clutched her worn backpack tightly against her chest as she hurried through the crowded terminal of Denver International Airport. Inside was everything that mattered: the carefully saved money from 18 months of double shifts, the donations from kind strangers who had been touched by Liam's story, and, most importantly, the medical documents for her 6-year-old son's treatment in New York City. After 2 years of watching Liam battle a rare kidney condition, enduring endless hospital visits, and mounting medical bills, she had finally gathered enough money for the specialized treatment he needed. Every penny had been hard-earned: early morning cleaning shifts at office buildings, evening work at a local diner, and countless weekends spent at flea markets, selling whatever she could spare from their tiny apartment. The overhead speakers crackled with the final boarding call for Flight 3152 to New York JFK. Hannah quickened her pace, her threadbare sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Her dark brown hair, hastily pulled into a messy ponytail that morning, was coming loose around her face. She had spent an extra 15 minutes comforting Liam at her sister's house, where he had clung to her legs, crying, "Don't leave without me, Mommy." The doctors had insisted he needed 1 more week of preliminary medication before traveling for the treatment. As she fumbled with her boarding pass at the gate, an envelope slipped from between the pages of her folder. Hannah didn't notice it flutter to the ground as she hurried down the jet bridge, mentally calculating if she had enough left over for a taxi from JFK Airport to St. John's Children's Hospital for her son's preliminary appointment. Behind her, a tall figure bent to retrieve the fallen envelope. Nathan Reed had been observing the harried young woman since she had sprinted past him at security. There was something compelling about her determined expression and the gentle way she handled what looked like medical documents peeking out of her bag. When the envelope fell, he instinctively reached for it. His fingers had just closed around the paper when the gate agent announced they were closing the doors. Once aboard, Nathan settled into his first-class seat, the mysterious envelope still in his hand. The flap wasn't properly sealed, and a corner of the letter inside was visible. After a moment's hesitation, his curiosity got the better of him, and he carefully slid out the single sheet of paper. "My dearest Hannah," the letter began in elegant, elderly handwriting. "As I watch you sleeping on our couch tonight, exhausted from another double shift, my heart aches with both pride and sadness. You've worked so hard to save for Liam's treatment. Never complaining, never giving up. Remember when you first started cleaning offices at Reed Corp? You'd come home with aching hands from scrubbing floors, but still managed to smile and read Liam his bedtime story." Nathan's throat tightened as he continued reading. The letter, written by Hannah's older sister, described the struggles of a single mother fighting desperately to save her sick child. She wrote about Hannah's unwavering determination, working multiple jobs, selling her cherished books, even donating plasma twice a month. But she also wrote about hope, the kindness of strangers who donated to Liam's medical fund, the support from their small community church, and Hannah's unshakable faith that somehow she'd find a way to get her son the treatment he needed. Looking up, Nathan spotted Hannah several rows ahead in economy class, her head resting against the window. His mind wandered to the cleaning staff he barely noticed during his late nights at the office. How many of them had stories like Hannah's? When was the last time he'd really looked at the people who kept his buildings running? The flight attendant's voice interrupted his thoughts, announcing their departure. As the plane began to taxi, Nathan carefully refolded the letter, his mind racing. The sister's words had affected him deeply, especially her description of Hannah's dedication to both her job and her son. He thought about his own mother, who had passed away from a treatable illness because their family couldn't afford proper medical care. That had been before his success, before he had built Reed Corp into a corporate empire. Hannah, meanwhile, was trying to calm her nerves about tomorrow's hospital consultation. The specialist's office had been clear; they required full payment before beginning Liam's treatment. She closed her eyes, picturing her son's smile, his wavy blonde hair so much like her own, the way his whole face lit up on good days when the pain wasn't too bad. The hospital bills in her bag represented every spare dollar she had managed to save or raise over the past 18 months. The plane lifted into the air, carrying its passengers toward New York, each lost in their own thoughts. Neither Hannah nor Nathan realized that this chance encounter, a dropped letter, an innocent glimpse into someone's private world, would set in motion events that would change both their lives. As the city lights faded below them, Nathan made a decision. He would return the letter. But first, he needed to understand more about this remarkable woman who cleaned his offices by night and fought for her son's life by day. The setting sun painted the clouds in shades of pink and gold, a beautiful backdrop to an evening that held the promise of something extraordinary. Sometimes, the most meaningful connections begin with the smallest moments, a lost letter, an act of curiosity, and the courage to reach across the invisible lines that divide people's worlds. As the plane climbed higher into the darkening sky, neither passenger could have predicted how their lives would soon intertwine. All because of a mother's love letter that spoke volumes about sacrifice, determination, and unwavering hope. As the flight reached cruising altitude, Nathan found himself reading the sister's letter for the third time. Each word revealed more layers of Hannah's struggle, working long hours on her knees scrubbing floors, saving every possible penny, and still maintaining the strength to comfort her sick child. The part that struck him most deeply was the description of Hannah singing softly to Liam during his dialysis sessions, trying to distract him from the pain even after working 16-hour shifts. Nathan shifted in his leather seat, acutely aware of the stark contrast between his first-class comfort and Hannah's economy placement. Through his weekly visits to his various office buildings, he had passed cleaning staff countless times without a second glance. Now, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the letter, mopping floors in his building while carrying such a heavy burden. The turbulence light flickered on, causing a slight ripple of tension through the cabin. Hannah gripped her armrests, her knuckles whitening. Nathan noticed her discomfort even from several rows away. A flight attendant passed by, offering water to nervous passengers, and Hannah gratefully accepted. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the cup, and Nathan could see she was mentally trying to distract herself by reviewing what appeared to be medical documents. In her economy seat, Hannah was indeed attempting to focus on the hospital paperwork. The treatment protocol had to be followed exactly. The specialist in New York, Dr. Callahan, was one of only 3 doctors in the country who performed this particular procedure for children. If something went wrong with the payment or paperwork, they'd lose their slot and have to wait another 6 months, time that Liam didn't have. The memory of her last visit to Liam's regular doctor still haunted her. Without this treatment, he had said gently, Liam's condition will continue to deteriorate. Hannah had nodded, fighting back tears as she counted the meager savings in her account. That night, she had started working her second job at the diner, coming home with aching feet but a determined heart. Nathan pulled out his phone, opening his browser to search for information about pediatric kidney conditions. The more he read, the more his heart ached. The treatment costs were staggering, often forcing families into bankruptcy. He thought about the cleaning service contract his company held, how much of Hannah's paycheck went to the middleman company instead of directly to the workers. The flight attendant's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing dinner service in first class. As Nathan absently picked at his meal, he found himself remembering conversations with his late mother during her final days. She had made him promise to never forget where he came from to help others when he achieved success. He donated to charities, but this felt different. More personal. More immediate. Hannah skipped the paid meal service in economy, instead pulling out a small sandwich from her bag. As she did so, a worn photograph fell into her lap, Liam's last birthday before his condition had worsened. In the picture, he was smiling broadly, his face smudged with cake frosting, while Hannah hugged him from behind. Despite their struggles, they had always found reasons to smile. The elderly woman sitting next to Hannah noticed the photo and commented on Liam's sweet smile. My grandson had kidney problems too, she shared, introducing herself as Margaret. He's 16 now, doing much better after his treatment. Hannah's eyes welled up at the unexpected connection, and she found herself sharing their story, including her fear about having enough money for the full treatment course. As the flight progressed, Nathan formulated a plan. He would wait until they landed to return the letter, using the opportunity to learn more about Hannah's situation. His company was in the process of reviewing their contractor agreements anyway. Perhaps it was time to make some changes that would benefit the workers directly. The plane encountered another patch of turbulence, more severe this time. Hannah closed her eyes, gripping the armrests tighter. Margaret patted her hand sympathetically, continuing their conversation to distract her. Nathan watched as Hannah's tension gradually eased, her genuine smile brightening her entire face as she shared stories about Liam's brave attitude during his hospital stays. Hannah found herself opening up to Margaret about their daily struggles. She described their tiny one-bedroom apartment, how she had sold nearly everything of value except Liam's beloved stuffed fox. Margaret listened intently, occasionally offering gentle words of encouragement and hope for the future. As the plane began its descent into New York, Hannah gathered her medical documents, mentally reviewing the hospital's location and the cheapest route to get there. She had no idea that the most important moment of her journey wasn't in the carefully prepared medical files, but in the hands of a stranger several rows behind her. Nathan tucked the letter safely into his jacket pocket, knowing that tomorrow would bring changes for both of them. The landing gear deployed with a thud, and Hannah's grip on her armrests tightened once again. Rain pelted the windows, creating streaming patterns in the darkness outside. New York City's skyline glowed softly through the precipitation, a warm welcome despite the weather. As the plane touched down, Hannah released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She reached for her phone, eager to check for messages from her sister about Liam. Nathan watched as Hannah quickly gathered her belongings, clearly intent on being one of the first to deplane. He decided to wait, giving her time to collect herself before he approached her in the terminal. What he didn't know was that Hannah had received a text from her sister that would complicate his carefully considered plan. A message that would test both their characters and set in motion a series of events neither could have anticipated. As passengers began to file out of the plane, the weight of the letter in Nathan's pocket seemed to grow heavier. He had just witnessed 3 hours of a person's life, but through that letter, he felt he had glimpsed something far more profound. The kind of love that would move mountains to save a child. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities for both of them. But for now, the letter remained a bridge between their two worlds, waiting to be crossed. The terminal at John F. Kennedy International Airport buzzed with late-night activity as Hannah rushed toward the taxi stand, her mind racing after reading her sister's text. Liam's fever spiked again. The local hospital wants to admit him. Please call immediately. Her hands trembled as she dialed home, barely noticing the distinguished man following several paces behind her. Nathan watched as Hannah's demeanor changed, her worry lines deepened with each passing second as she spoke urgently into her phone. He hesitated, the letter still in his pocket, wondering if this was the right moment to approach her. The conversation he overheard made him pause. What did the doctor say exactly? Hannah's voice quavered. I have all the money for tomorrow's consultation. We can't lose this appointment slot, it took months to get. She pressed her free hand against her forehead, conflict evident in every gesture. Could you put his regular doctor on the phone if he's still there? Nathan observed as Hannah's face crumpled at whatever news she received. What do you mean we need to start the treatment protocol over? That's another $155,000. We don't. Her voice broke and she leaned against a nearby pillar for support. The medical documents she had been clutching slipped from her grasp, scattering across the terminal floor. Without hesitation, Nathan stepped forward to help gather the papers. As he collected them, he caught glimpses of medical terms, treatment costs, and payment plans. The total sum made him understand why Hannah had been working multiple jobs at his buildings. The treatment costs were staggering, for someone on a cleaner's salary, impossible. Hannah was too distraught to even notice who was helping her. Maggie, tell them we'll figure something out. Don't let them discharge him. I'll find a way to get more money. She ended the call and finally looked up, freezing when she recognized the man holding her papers. Mr. Reed? She gasped, immediately straightening her posture despite her emotional state. I thank you for it. Her eyes fell on the familiar envelope in his hand and her face flushed with embarrassment. Please call me Nathan, he said gently, holding out both the medical papers and the letter. I believe you dropped this on the plane. And yes, I read it. Your sister writes beautifully about you and Liam. Hannah took the papers with trembling hands, tears threatening to spill over. I'm sorry you had to see all this. I know it's not professional to bring personal problems to work, even indirectly. Hannah, Nathan interrupted softly, you clean my company's offices at night while caring for a sick child during the day. That kind of dedication deserves recognition, not apologies. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I couldn't help overhearing about Liam's condition. Would you tell me more about it? Perhaps it was his gentle tone, or maybe just the overwhelming events of the day, but Hannah found herself sharing everything. She told him about Liam's diagnosis 2 years ago, about the specialized treatment that could help him live a normal life, about the endless fundraising and second jobs that had finally given them hope. And now, with the setback, they'd need to start the treatment protocol over. Money they simply didn't have. Nathan listened intently, his mind racing through possibilities. The specialist you're meeting tomorrow, Dr. Callahan? When Hannah nodded, he continued. I know of his work. My mother, he paused, collecting himself. She could have been saved by a similar specialist, but we couldn't afford it back then. I've donated to his research foundation ever since I made my first million. Hannah's eyes widened as she realized what he was saying. Mr. Reed, Nathan, I couldn't possibly accept. Consider it in advance, he interrupted. I've been meaning to bring our cleaning services in-house instead of using contractors. We'll need a supervisor, someone who understands both the work and the workers. Someone with dedication, integrity, and management potential. Fresh tears spilled down Hannah's cheeks. Why would you do this? You barely know me. Sometimes we don't need to know someone long to recognize their worth, Nathan replied, already pulling out his phone. Let me make a few calls. We need to get you back to Denver tonight and then we'll sort out Liam's transfer to New York General Hospital. Dr. Callahan owes me a favor anyway. Within the hour, Hannah found herself aboard Nathan's private jet heading back to Denver. Her mind was spinning with the evening's developments. Nathan sat across from her, quietly making arrangements that would change her and Liam's lives forever. I've spoken to Dr. Callahan, he said as they neared Denver. He's agreed to coordinate with Liam's local doctors. Once he's stable, we'll fly both of you back to New York on my jet. The treatment costs are taken care of. Hannah stared at him through tears. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Build me a better company, Nathan replied simply. Help me create a workplace where people like you don't have to choose between caring for their children and making a living. He paused, then added softly. And maybe let me know how Liam's doing from time to time. I'd like to see him get better. As the plane descended toward Denver, Hannah held her sister's letter close to her heart. The words that had seemed so desperate hours ago now felt like a prophecy of hope. Her sister had written about believing in miracles. Perhaps she had been right all along. Liam was all she had in the world, the reason she got up every morning to scrub floors and clean bathrooms. Now, because of a lost letter and a kind-hearted businessman, her son would have a chance at a normal life. She looked across at Nathan, who was still making calls to ensure Liam would receive the best care possible, and felt a warmth in her heart she hadn't experienced in years. The city lights of Denver twinkled below them, a constellation of earthbound stars guiding them home. Hannah thought about all the nights she'd spent cleaning offices in those buildings, never imagining that one day she'd be flying above them in a private jet with the company's owner, who had just become her son's unlikely guardian angel. Back in the terminal, before boarding his jet, Nathan had made one final call to his head of human resources. We're restructuring the cleaning services division, he had said firmly. And I found someone who knows exactly how it should be done. As he watched Hannah now, already making notes about improvements she'd implement, he knew he'd made the right decision. Neither of them could have predicted how this night would transform their lives. A lost letter leading to a chance encounter that would save not just Liam's life, but create ripples of change throughout Reed Corp. As their plane approached Denver's glittering skyline, the stars twinkled above, bearing witness to the beginning of something extraordinary. A story of hope, compassion, and the unexpected ways that lives can intertwine. When fate drops a letter at just the right moment. 3 months had passed since that fateful night at JFK International Airport. Liam sat in his private room at New York General Hospital, his color significantly improved, working on his latest drawing while his mother watched from a comfortable chair beside his bed. The wall was covered with get-well cards from the cleaning staff at Reed Corp, where Hannah now served as Director of Facilities Management. The transformation in Liam's health had been remarkable. Since starting Dr. Callahan's treatment protocol, the dark circles under his eyes had faded, his appetite had returned, and his natural childhood energy was slowly rebounding. Today was a special day, his final treatment session, and the doctors were optimistic about his full recovery. Hannah glanced at her sister's letter, now framed and hanging on the hospital room wall. Nathan's idea, she thought, smiling. To remind us where this journey began, he had said when he surprised them with it last month. The words that had once spoken of desperate hope now served as a testament to answered prayers and unexpected miracles. Nathan visited them every day despite his busy schedule running his company. He would arrive with new art supplies for Liam, who had taken to drawing elaborate thank you cards for the hospital staff. The boy's artistic talent had flourished during his recovery, encouraged by both Hannah and Nathan's unwavering support. "Mom," Liam called out, holding up his latest masterpiece. "Do you think Mr. Nathan will like it?" The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands, a tall man in a suit, a woman with wavy brown hair, and a small boy between them, all standing in front of a big building with Reed Corp written across the top. Hannah's heart warmed at her son's innocent question. Over the past months, Nathan had become more than just their benefactor. He spent weekends with them, teaching Liam to play chess in the hospital garden, bringing board games during treatment sessions, and sharing stories about his own childhood dreams of becoming an artist before life led him down a different path. The door opened and Nathan entered carrying his usual weekend bag of art supplies. But today there was something different about his expression. He seemed nervous, almost hesitant as he set the bag down and greeted Liam with their special handshake, the one they had invented during the long hospital stays. "How's my favorite artist today?" Nathan asked, ruffling Liam's hair. The boy proudly showed him the drawing, explaining each detail with enthusiasm. Nathan listened intently the way he always did, treating Liam's artistic explanations with the same seriousness he gave to corporate board meetings. "Hannah," Nathan said after Liam had finished his presentation, "could we talk for a moment?" He glanced meaningfully toward the hospital room's small balcony. Hannah followed him outside, leaving the door slightly ajar to keep an eye on Liam. The New York skyline stretched before them, bathed in late afternoon sunlight. Nathan took a deep breath, running his hand through his hair in an uncharacteristically nervous gesture. "These past months have shown me what's been missing in my life," he began. "When I read your sister's letter that night, I thought I was just helping someone in need. I never expected to find—" He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I never expected to find a family. Liam, he's taught me more about joy and courage than any business deal ever has. And you, Hannah, your strength, your dedication, your heart, I find myself wanting to be part of every moment. Every challenge. Every victory." Hannah's breath caught as Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside wasn't an elaborate diamond ring, but a simple, elegant band with two small stones, one blue, one green. "Liam helped me pick it out," Nathan admitted with a soft laugh. "He said it had to have both our favorite colors because that's what families do. They bring their favorite things together." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "Hannah Carter," Nathan continued, his voice gentle but firm, "I know this might seem fast, but when you know something is right, when you find the missing pieces of your life's puzzle, will you marry me? Both of you have become my whole world, and I want to spend the rest of my life being part of your amazing journey." Tears spilled down Hannah's cheeks as she looked through the door at Liam, who was watching them with a knowing grin. "Did you help plan this?" she called to him, laughing through her tears. Liam's grin widened. "Mr. Nathan said we had to wait until after my last treatment because that way we could have a proper celebration. I kept the secret for whole weeks, Mom." Hannah turned back to Nathan, seeing in his eyes the same love and commitment she had witnessed every day for the past 3 months. "Yes," she whispered. Then she added, "But I have one condition." Nathan raised an eyebrow, waiting. "We use part of your resources to create a foundation," she said firmly, "to help other families who are where we were, struggling to afford medical treatment for their children while working multiple jobs just to survive." Nathan pulled her close, both of them laughing and crying now. "I already have the paperwork drawn up," he admitted. Liam suggested we call it the Lost Letter Foundation because sometimes the best things in life start with a lost letter and a found heart. That evening, as they celebrated both Liam's final treatment and their engagement with a small party in the hospital room, Hannah watched her son teaching Nathan the proper way to color a dinosaur. Her sister's letter hung on the wall above them, its words no longer a testimony of struggle, but a reminder that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures. As Liam fell asleep that night, exhausted but happy, Hannah and Nathan stood watching him from the doorway. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing us that night." "Really seeing us?" Nathan squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for dropping that letter," he replied, "and for showing me what real strength looks like." He paused, then added with a smile, "Though I'm still not convinced about Liam's insistence that our wedding cake needs to be decorated with cleaning supplies and business suits." Hannah laughed softly, leaning into his embrace. "Sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most unlikely places. With a lost letter, a sick child, and a businessman who remembered what it meant to see the real value in people." As they stood there, watching Liam sleep peacefully for the first time in years, they knew that their story was just beginning. And it was more beautiful than any of them could have imagined.